I wanted to go over some of the changes to the course. Oh, I just realized what I forgot to include. I can do it here. So I made a couple changes that I think are going to stay consistent going forward with the course. I originally did them in spring of 2020 for adapting to the pandemic, and for one, we're probably going to be dealing with that for the next few semesters still. Um, but also, I think that it probably aligns the course a little better with a focus on writing rather than a focus on research methods. And when I talked with some of the professors who teach experimental psych about what is it really essential that students get before they get to you, it seemed like with this shift I can emphasize more of how research questions should flow out of what you're writing in your introduction, which starts out as your literature review. Partly because we're in the middle of a pandemic and I don't have reliable child care, and it takes me 2 to 3 weeks of full-time work to make the whole series of videos. I can't just redo all of my videos. I tried this time when I did the videos to make them as specific to individual assignments as possible, to make it easier to sub out and update videos if I find that a particular video is confusing or that I want to change an assignment. So hopefully, even though I'm shifting a lot about how the paper goes, I'm hoping that some things still make sense. And I'm still having you watch the videos from previous stuff because I still want you to know that those sections normally go into a research proposal, what they're for, what they do, because I don't want that to be totally new information when you hit stats or experimental. So I will focus on what has been changed. So one nice thing is that previously, so I may move where some of these videos go, I may not, because on the one hand it's really helpful to have a research question in mind when you're writing these things, when you're writing your outlines. So originally in Module 4, I had you doing your research question either Wednesday or Sunday. And for some students that was very overwhelming because it's kind of like I'm pulling you in different directions. I'm having you outline, but I'm also having you think about your research question. With this change, I was able to push that back a little bit. So now the research question gets done on Wednesday. That's still as you're writing your literature review, but at least it's kind of a lull where there's not a lot due. You're kind of just doing stuff in the background. It also means previously I had the present study paragraph due at the same time as the final literature review paper. I've been able to separate those because that's a pretty big hurdle to get through. So now the present study is due Wednesday of Module 6. So when I do my weekly overviews, there's going to be things that are a little bit off. The to-do list is always going to be your most updated. And again, I recognize that anything being off is confusing, and also it is just, I think it creates less work to reduce the workload and let it be a little confusing than to leave things as is. And it's just, you know, online courses, it's beautiful because you do the work once and then you get to reuse it, but it's really a problem when you need to update anything. So then the discussion outline goes there. So there used to be method and results outlines, and then you would do the drafts in as part of your discussions for peer review. I got rid of those outlines, which is part of how I was able to push other things back. And so if you're not writing those sections, you're not doing those discussions. So what I did is I replaced with discussions about what a research proposal is, what it includes, and what the methods and results sections are. Now you'll note, as of this moment, these are very high point discussions because I was taking away assignments, the points needed to go somewhere. I didn't want to fully reorganize the course and think about where those points were most deserved. So these are two discussions that have a lot higher point values than discussions typically have. And that's just kind of an artifact of the way they came into being. So if we look here, I'll show you where those discussions are because again, when you watch the mod, I have really nice module overview videos and those are now outdated. So in week 6, you will have two discussion questions that ask you to talk about sort of bigger structural issues with what research proposals are, what the methods and results sections are. I ask you to answer or to ask a question, and it may be a question you genuinely have, but I really want you to push to think about, if you had to ask a question, what would it be? Or what do you think other people's questions might be? Now, you're not required to go in, and if you do have a really burning question, don't trust that I'll notice it while I'm grading. I do look over things, but I don't always, if I'm forcing you to ask a question, I'm not necessarily going to know that you really do want an answer. So if you really want an answer to this, send me an email and I will follow up with you. I will look through, though. I may answer some of them. I just won't guarantee an answer. After that, things go pretty much back to normal. Now, at this point, it just so happens, so I am struggling with pandemic, and I'm also struggling with still adapting to the 7th edition of APA. So I just updated my sample papers because I needed to update, I wanted updates for APA style. And most of those sample papers came from my in-person classes with the adjusted format. So most of the sample papers you're looking at already have that switch. So we've got introduction, the present study, and it goes straight into discussion. And I have comments sort of explaining. Normally there's extra stuff that goes in. And I think actually at this point, it may be that the one that is codenamed Manatee may be the only one that actually has the method with participants, measures, and procedures, because that's from my online class. So when you look at these sample papers, most of them will show that shift from present study right into discussion. So I'm not requiring you to outline exactly what to group, how are you going to measure, how are you going to recruit people, what measurements are you using. I'm taking a lot of that more research methods burden off you. So instead I'm adding more of a writing focused burden, which is thinking about how this question is going to logically flow from what you have written. I'm going to make a separate video to replace the research question video that I previously had that focuses just on that. So as a recap, you're still going to watch videos about the method results as if you are doing those, and my overview videos that talk about what's in a research proposal are still going to talk about those sections. And I leave that in partly because it's just not feasible for me to redo an entire video series at the moment, but also because I think it's still really important that you get exposure to that, but I've just decided I don't think you need to do that. You don't need to do it for your paper at this time. Thanks.